Start streaming, see what we got. Do 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 do. All right, let's see. Where'd YouTube go? I know I've got like a YouTuber around here somewhere. There it is. Let's go to the. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Or happy Monday. Sometimes it's not morning where you're at. Maybe you're down there and maybe you're over in India, or maybe you're watching from South Africa. I know we've got students there. So let's check this out. Got audio? Yep, got audio, so we're good. Very happy with that. Always got to check things before we leave the station here because, well, I'll be completely honest with you. I've left the station here before without audio, and it's all the sads. It's no good. But a happy morning, a happy Monday to you, regardless of where you're at. If it's morning, evening, whatever it may be. Chris Courtney here, NewPragmatic. We are going to leave the station because we have a lot of student work to look at. In the queue right now, we've got Ricardo, we've got Bryn, we've got Heather, we've got Luigi, and we've got a lot of stuff to look at. So without further ado, I'm going to dispense with all the monologuing because the live stream's been very effective. People have been finding it. We used to do the bumpers and whatnot. And you know what? Let's just get to the review. And if we have some special magic come along the way, we'll clip that out and make a video out of it. But for right now, we're going to stick with the live stream. And I'm going to go ahead and transition this away and get us over to Figma. Let's make sure that's happening. All right. So let's start here with Heather. And Heather is working through the Type 101 exercise. And if you're familiar at all with me, you know I've got like a billion, I've got a library of books kind of hanging out with me. And Type 101 is definitely based straight out of Anatomy of Type. These exercises aren't in Anatomy Type for the record, but a lot of the definitions and whatnot, if you're wanting to dive deeper, Anatomy Type, it's a great book for that. But here, one here is cap height, two here is X height, and cap height is nice, but X height and baseline, which is 3. Those are two things that you just absolutely have to know what they are to have any sort of conversation around typography. If you don't understand what the baseline is, if you don't understand what the X height is, you can't really begin to discuss typography. So I'm super glad to see that well, actually, I don't know because I haven't seen if you answered those correctly. But we have Ascender and Overhang. Overhang is one that I always struggled with when I was first getting started. Let's see here. Well, the interior spaces, actually, sorry, I missed Ascender down here. The interior spaces here are counters. And then you've got the ye old serif right here. So I believe you nailed all of those. Cap height, X height, baseline, Ascender, overhang, descender, counter, serif. Yeah, it's all right there. So good job there. Obviously, the more challenging of the two is receiving these 3 different typefaces and label, headline, and paragraph, and determining whether or not these actually are usable in their current presentation. And what you'll find is that I think you did a very good job with this. I have to make this very, very clear. If I change the weight, I could use all of these as a label. I can basically use anything as a label, but not. I wouldn't want to use most of these as a label in their current weight and configuration. Like I like to put tracking in and space things out. I like to use color. I like to use underlines. Like there's all sorts of things that I like to do with labels. I very rarely will just use a plain label, not tracked out at the same weight. So I think you're spot on here. Roboto is the easiest one to just use at the plain weight. I would definitely want to track IBM Plex out. IBM, all of these are really good headlines, though. I would say for me, if there was one I was going to avoid as a headline, it'd probably be Roboto, because it is so just like, it's just so plain. If I had Roboto Bold or something with a little more oomph, possibly. But Dido, it's fine. It's like the best of this. It's like you can't use it as a paragraph text, so you didn't fall into that trap. Roboto again is it's like water. It's like it can go anywhere. It's much like Helvetica. I do like Plex Sans as or Plex Serif rather as a paragraph text. So I think it works pretty well. It's got enough for the eye to hook onto, where Roboto is just, it's very hard for your eye to hook on anything because there's no serifs. Here on Dido, the problem here is the stroke contrast is so great that parts of it begin to disappear. Like the Y, one part of the Y here is great, while the other side of it is so thin. And then we're looking at it pretty large, but if you shrink that down to like how regular typography would show up, it's just like, what are you supposed to do with that? So I think you did a pretty good job here, Heather, and I think your explanations were spot on. But I also like the fact that you try to go through and add some preference here. It's like, oh, these aren't all equally weighted. I feel okay about these in the blue. These I consider using these as paragraph text, but you obviously only marked you marked all three on Roboto, but the other two you kind of stair step down. So I like the idea that you're adding a little bit of weight to your decision making here. So this is really pretty good. Let's see here. Well, this is Bren, and Bren's over here in the realm of Visual Foundation. And one thing I'll say here, as we move from Heather to Bren, is that I thought that, so Open Sans, we talked about this last week, but then you got into Oswald, and Oswald is that compressed. I think I would flip it. If you were going to look at Oswald, I wouldn't look at something this narrow as a body font. I would flip it and say, okay, well, Oswald, I'll use it as the headline, or and you can kind of see, like when I was using it here, I went in and I was using it as a label. So I wasn't really seeing Oswald as like your secondary text. And really I shouldn't say secondary. Your body is, the vast majority of your typography is going to be in that body weight. So it almost is like the anchor or the primary. So here when you put it into use, I don't think this works at all. But if you had flipped it, like if you went Oswald with Open Sans, and this was Oswald and this was Open Sans, you get something that's functional. But the way you've got it right now, I don't think it works. So I would not have gone that direction either. Sorry, that's Ricardo. We'll get to him in a second. Here is Poppins and Bitter, and this is far more a traditional pairing. I do think Poppins and Bitter, when you look at it, I think that's what you've got here. Yeah, this is Bitter, this is Poppins. If you look at the structure of the character itself, very similar. Now Poppins, it's going to be hard to match it with Poppins as it is so geometric, but I think Bitter carries a very similar weight with it, and I think that you can do a lot with it. I think it's got extra weights to it. Like if you come down here and take a look, it's got a very robust sorry, lost my words there. It's very robust. It's got a lot of different weights you can work with. It's got italics, everything you need to use it in a robust design. So this pairing, I'm guessing if we get over here to part 2 where you begin to apply it, I'm going to see Poppins and Bitter, which that, let's see here. This is, that's Lotto. That's interesting. How did Lotto get in there? Lotto. Maybe Lotto just comes with it. Yeah, okay. So you didn't apply one of them. You just applied the colors, which is fine. Um, when we look here at the colors, and again, this is visual exploration. I think that what's really interesting for me is like how great food is for providing a palette. Um, you know, regardless of which direction you go, it's going to feel natural, and you're picking up some very vibrant colors. All right, and I think that I would probably adjust these a bit. Like I would say, okay, I'm gonna go with this blueberry, or I'm gonna go with this warm orange and almost goldenrod tone, and I'm gonna play the others as like pastel pulled back versions of themselves, so I can have some some focus. Right now, these are all like at full saturation, except for when you get down to here. Same thing down here, but these are all very vibrant. And my only suggestion is that you can't use everything at 100%. Um, so you've got to like find a tone. Like here, I think your focus is probably up here in because you've got these purples and the mauves and like I think this is really great. You could play the greens back. I definitely wouldn't go the other direction on this one, playing the reds back, reds and purples. Here you've got a really nice, like almost Christmassy feel. But I would play some of these others again back, and that would allow this to not get so Crayola. Right, like right now, this is this nav actually, the way you've got this top one is pretty good. I really like this. You're utilizing the tone here, that like the lighter green. I can feel myself rolling over. On the other side, you've got this really maroon red, and you're using the lime color to make things, to like guide people to like, here's the action I want you to take. So I think you're using contrast the right way. I'm not sure how this plays out in like in real time in a prototype. What I will say here, though, it looks like I might have accidentally. Yeah, there we go. What I will say here is like this is more in line with what we traditionally see in a design. You've got like a color swatch that's kind of laid back. You've got a focal point. Here's the maroon coming back in. This one's really nice though. Okay, so there is a way to play back and still be really dark, and that's what this is. There's not a lot of color here. That it's really heavy, but it's not like it doesn't project forward because it's cool, and it's also it's got so much shade in it. So anyway, it pulls back. The mint color pops out, and this is really effective. So that's a very interesting approach, and this again is a nice pairing. I also like the fact that you brought that green back in for the highlight. This is more, I'm gonna go with like complementary, like opposite sides of the color wheel sort of combinations. But I think you've got a lot of really nice options here, and I'm really curious to see what happens when we get over, because I have not looked at this. So okay, so now we've got your combinations, and so you've picked out the color. Okay, so you've picked out 3 of these, and it looks like you've basically brought those over. Okay, and okay, so this is like design 1. Okay, and this is design 2. Okay. This is just, okay. Something, I don't know if that was intentional. Maybe that was just left behind. The So the one thing I'll say here that's interesting is I don't see any like photography. Like when I look at this, everything is an illustration. And this is a food like service. So I understand like utilization of some illustration, but one of the things we know about food is that people love food, and you know there, there's a reason why there were a series of like food photography apps that got really popular in recent years because we love food. It's one of the things that people. So when you think about like, what do you do when you pull up one of those like a Yelp or something? You look at all the photos of the food to see what you want to order. So right now this is devoid of that, and I think that's the real. I think that's a miss on this. And right now the designs are so similar that I don't. I know you have like one base design you want to look at, but I would push the other ones to see what else is possible. Now that you've got like now that you've got some color and typography, like right now you're just kind of playing with crayons and kind of like, oh, I'm just going to apply different color to the same thing. That's going to be very hard for somebody to give you. Like if you put this into a preference test, which I think I just promoted on, because I didn't look at it yet, but I just like gave it a shout out. I think I'll pull that back because when I look at this isn't ready for a preference test because it's all swimming in the same lane. I need some differences to look at, and I think color, and then take the same concepts, but how else could you present this information? Especially if you said, okay, in this design, I'm gonna, instead of going with the illustrations, I'm going to do photography. Like that's going to begin. This is going to begin to take a different shape, pretty quickly. So I would take at least one of these and take it off in a different direction, because right now there's nothing to compare. It's just kind of like, what shade of color do I like? Because again, all the content, like there's no difference in the typography either. It's all just like, here's Poppins, here's bitter, and go. Like I would flip it. I would say, okay, well, in this version, I'm gonna use bitter where I use Poppins, and I'm gonna use Poppins where I use bitter. And like again, this is the moment where you want to push things and see, okay, can I find a solution that elevates over what I'm staring at? Because right now, what you're staring at is about, this is about as good as that idea is going to get. Or at least that's what this is saying. This is like saying, this is the peak. This is not the peak. Okay, this is the first round of preference testing, and we've got to offer something to the people that pushes this in different directions. Okay, so that's what as far as the color and type work, I think you're good there. But in the application, I think that we've forgotten that photography is a possibility. Okay, and not only photography, also this is not a landed design. I need to show an option 1 and an option 2 that look different enough that I can go, oh yeah, I prefer that one. Because right now I'm saying I prefer red, or I prefer yellow, I prefer green. I'm not telling you anything about my preference of your design. I'm telling you about my preference of color. And I think we want to be moving past that right now. All right. Let's come over here to Ricardo. All right, Ricardo. You're in survey land. You're getting ready to build your cohort. And so this says meal delivery survey. Hello, this survey is to help give me insight into meal delivery. Your information and responses will remain private. All right. So I would expand on this. Say, hey, thanks so much for taking a moment out to take the survey. I'm trying to gain insights into how people are using meal delivery, how people's meal delivery habits have changed through the pandemic. Your information and responses will remain private. Thank you so much for I would say something about time. The survey shouldn't take more than a few minutes. Your information and responses will remain private. Thank you so much for participating. Like, leave that there, and then we'll jump into like the meat of it. So since beginning, and you really have focused this on pandemic to start with since the beginning of 2020, has the amount of you order food delivery increased or decreased? I would switch this to say, has your food delivery usage increased or decreased? And I would also have an option about stayed the same, or never used. So increased, like, you can't decrease if you've never used. You have to have an option that says, no, I'm about the same. Do you work from home? Yes. No, I commute. This is interesting because not everybody works. And this is something that, we always struggle with because we think that everybody is just like us. There are some people, so I would say, something along the lines of, where do you spend the majority of your day? I would say something like, how do you spend the majority of your day? Working from home, working in an office, or you could say working / school from home, outside of the home, retired. Like, there are options that you could put in there that would help flesh this out. How often do you order food delivery? I think that one's fine. Because even if you say never, that's less than once a week. Have you ever used a meal delivery service? Yes, no. I think that this could be like at the top, because if they say no to this question, I don't really need to ask the how often do you order food delivery service, because this is weekly. This is a little different. So you might ask a similar question, a little higher up. That's, how often do you order? Yeah, I think I would take this question actually. How often do you order food delivery? Less than once a week. Once or twice, three to four times a week. I never order out. If they never order out, then we know the answer to this question. And we also know the answer to this question. So, if they say that they never order out, I can take them down a different path and begin asking questions like, oh, that's interesting. What is there a particular reason why you avoid ordering out? And you may find that, like, oh, it's health reasons, or it's too expensive, or any of those things. So I think you've got some good questions. Each of them can use some work. Some of this could be I've seen others focus in down here on the weekly meal service. Basically with a question like, have you ever used a meal delivery service? Yes, no. If you say no, the question is why. If you say yes, then I'll take you through a bunch of other questions. But I think that, again, there's a clear want to ask that upfront question that gets to, do you use services like this or not? And then from there, you could begin to parse this out further. I want to answer these questions just really quickly. I'm not going to submit it because I don't want to. Let's see here. Oh, okay. So no. Wait. Interesting. Have you ever paid for a subscription Okay, let's go back. Yes, leave page. Increased. Yes. No, I don't order. Oh, okay. So now, thank you for your participation again. Okay, so let's go back. So if I tell you I don't, that's kind of interesting because if I tell you that I don't, you take me immediately to the exit path. If I tell you that I do, okay, so you do have some other questions here. So have you ever paid for a subscription? Have you ever paid a subscription for a weekly meal service? Okay, I'm gonna say yes. How many times a week did they deliver? Once or twice a week. How long did you subscribe to the how long did you subscribe to the service? You also need to have like instead of 2 years, I would say I might switch this around and say get rid of like 1 month, 2 months. I'd say less than a month, less 2 to 6 months, a year plus, and then I might say current subscriber, like because right now you have no option for current subscriber. Were meals prepped in advance or did you prepare them? Prepped in advance. Were there vegetarian options? Yes. What prices would you say are too expensive? So this is a question you had, and from your journal, and I think the phrasing you're looking for here is, how much are you willing to pay, or how much are you comfortable paying for a meal subscription, rather than what prices would you say are too expensive. Just how much are you willing to pay? I'm willing to pay $6.99 a week for 2 meals, or this is a kind of interesting $6.99 a week for 2 meal. So this would be like $3.50 per meal. This would be $4.50 per meal. So we've got to get some sort of logic around what these prices are, because this is like $2.50 per meal, but this is saying I'm only getting 2 meals per week, which doesn't seem like much of a subscription. Anyway, let's see here. Yes. Okay, so I need some other information here that it doesn't appear like we're getting at the moment, in that where are they? Are they in a city? Are they in a countryside? Like, do you want to know the town? What's their general age? I don't necessarily think you have to ask what their income bracket is. Some of that becomes apparent when you look at, okay, how do they, if this person orders food delivery a lot, they're probably not, they're not, unemployed or broke. Again, look at what they do, not who they are. But I would like to know where they are. I think where they are is pretty important, because your service is focused on urban and suburban areas. If you've got some remote customer that they're way out in the boondocks and they never order food delivery, I wouldn't really put them in your cohort of people to talk to. But if you've got an urban person who never orders food delivery, that's very much somebody I want to talk to, because that is a potential person I could turn it into a customer. Okay? So, like, some overhaul here on the survey I think is necessary for you to get the most out of this. But I think that your questions overall are in the right direction. Okay? All right, so let's jump over. I believe Luigi is the last person standing here. And Luigi's turned in his portfolio page that he's going to be attempting to code. And, right now, the good news, Luigi, is like that top nav, we've got that sorted. Because, we just coded that up last week on your homepage. So that's going to port right over. When we look at this, obviously you've got that's a big image of your app. Here's what this was for. your role over the process, problem objective, project observations, a little bit of show and tell, and then other projects. What's interesting to me is that this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to copy it over here because I want to just kind of look at this. So the first thing I notice is like when we look at this, there's a very strict column structure that this is paying attention to, and I'm going to just mute that down. So first of all, this rectangle that you've got provides a column, a container, if you will. That's how we often refer to it. If you go with the idea that, all right, so I've got my nav and I don't need this to go all the way up, and also this container is not impacting that nav. I mean, it's the container is just at a particular width below it. Your column structure really starts down here, and there is a when we look at this, there's a definite different feel. This could be a section, because while I see this width as being similar, there's something going on over here with this column that I can't quite pick up. This section, this is definitely a section. This is a different section. It's a 3-column design. You could use that same design, that same column breakdown down here. And then there's this section here which does not follow your grid structure, but you could definitely like put margin on it to measure it in, but it's a 2-column design otherwise. So you've got 2 areas that are 3-column design. This could be, like, depending on how you designed this could be a CSS grid like 2FR, 1FR, 1FR, where 1FR is empty, and you just have this third, it's like 1 wide column and 2 narrow columns. The second column remains empty, and then you put all this content in the third column. Or you could float this. You could say, okay, this is a section. I'm going to take up half of this, and it's going to go to the left. And you're going to take up like 25%. You're going to go to the right. You can get real simple with that. And then this is, again, this is a structure that is probably CSS grid. It's like, okay, 1FR, 1FR, grid gap, and you just populate it with your stuff. So, and this is 1FR, 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 same thing here. So, but this is how, if I was setting down to code this, I would say, okay, well, I've got a container. So, div equals container, put the fresh market app stuff in there. Then I would have a section underneath that, and that would be, section intro. And then it would have section problem, and then section observations, and then section show and tell, and then section other. And I think that if you can begin to take this and go, okay, well, now I understand what the different building blocks are of this design, you can quickly populate this. This wouldn't take more than really a few minutes. As you get more comfortable with like CSS grid, this is something you can put together in a few minutes with just like dummy blocks. The content will always take longer. It's the editing, it's the refinement of the visuals that go into those spots, and then the editing of the copy. But I do like the design. It expands on where you're at currently, while not completely abandoning it. But I do think that this is definitely a good move forward. And again, if container and then sections within, let's get that going. And then we can begin working on, okay, so what's this very specific spacing that's happening here, okay? All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for today's edition of the Feedback Loop. Thank you to Heather. Thank you to Bren. Thank you to Ricardo. Thank you to Luigi for submitting work today. If you have been tagging along with us today, you've been watching this, you want to get in on the action, go to newpragmatic.com/mentorship. I give daily feedback to students on the work that they're performing. We meet weekly, have one-on-one meetings, and you can take part of that just like everybody else here is. All right, without further ado, I'm Chris Courtney. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.